Before I get to question two, I just want to, I didn't thank the panelists, so I just want to thank you guys, especially for your flexibility, for being here. We know some of you showed up at MLK and still drove over here, so we just want to thank you guys for that, because without you, we wouldn't have this forum. And we want to recognize our professor, actually, Jared Anderson, who's in the back. He's also the coach of the speech and debate team, so just thank you guys. So, question two. Proposition 19 has passed would have allowed the state to raise tax revenue, and Measure C was estimated to bring in $3 million in the local sales tax before the closure of the medical marijuana dispensaries. What is your perspective on the tax revenue estimations, and how do you think these closures actually impact the state and local tax base?
So I have a lot to say about this. I'll try to make it quick. First of all, I'd like to say that medical marijuana should not be taxed. It's a medicine, it should not be taxed. Second of all, we are getting taxed without representation. The county collectives that were shut down were paying sales tax. For the last few years, I've been a medical cannabis collective consultant and have been a bookkeeper for many of the collectives. On average, the collectives pay $10,000 a month to the State Board of Equalization in taxes that go directly to the county. In the city of Sacramento, there's an additional 4% tax that the collectives are paying, which puts, I think it's almost 12% taxes on patients. They have to pay that on their medicine. The city made $1 million last year, and if I had a calculator, I could tell you how much the state made, but it's in the billions. The State Board of Equalization is one of our biggest supporters for that reason. The initiative that we're trying to pass right now in the county to open the collectives back up will also impose a 4% tax. It's not something I agree with, but it's something that we need to do in order to get the votes that we need. Those taxes will go directly to our county, and we'll raise about $2 million. So even though I don't support it, and we are taxed without representation, I can see that it is something that we're going to have to live with at this point.
When I left law enforcement, I became a small business owner in the city of Folsom. I'm now a graphic designer and a filmmaker. I've moved into making movies instead of arresting people. That gives me an interesting perspective because I was working off of sales taxes before in my prior occupation, and now I generate sales taxes and I pay them. I see what the city can do with sales taxes. We've just relocated down to Sutter Street. Anyone here been to historic Folsom, Sutter Street area? They just completely renovated it. It's about a $10 to $12 million project. That money came from taxes. And in that particular case, I think it was some sort of tax on the water bill that they've been collecting for the last 10 or 15 years. That entire area has now been completely retrofitted, and it's now popular and welcoming people all the time in a way that it hasn't been for years. In that way, I see that there's a significant amount of good things that the local communities can do with the taxes that are remitted, not just on medical marijuana, but on any kind of public resource, whether it be cigarettes, whether it be water, whether it be any kind of thing. I think it gets to be an issue where voters have to assert their right and their opinion on where those monies should be spent. But I think it's a shame to see those monies vanish out of thin air when they really didn't need to.
I'm in support of taxation of medical marijuana in some small percentage. Overtaxation I can't agree with, of course. But I believe it just helps out local government. And any bill or any ordinance is not going to get passed if there's not some type of taxation, for the city or the local governments to reap from. And we've already seen the benefits of taxation for the cities, the local cities. But I'm for the taxation of it. I'd like to see it in the ordinances of local governments. And that's about it. Thank you.
When they tried to pass it, well, they actually did pass Measure C, but 19 didn't pass. So that's where we ended up with the 4% tax on Sacramento. And that is a sin tax on people's medicine. And they are already taxed by the Board of Equalization, the 7, or is it 8%, on their medicine also, which doesn't happen to anyone else with their harsh pharmaceuticals. So it is definitely unfair. And the liberal in me does not like that at all. I believe in equality, and I believe that everybody should be treated the same. That said, I've probably helped a couple thousand patients since Measure C passed, and I think 3 of them complained about paying the taxes. And that's because we as cannabis patients are desperate for acceptance, and we think if we give you money that you'll accept us. And that's kind of where a lot of us fall, and that's where I fall. I'll give you my money, just stop shutting us down. So the estimated tax is $3 million if you were able to have recreational marijuana. And now all that money is going to go into the black market to people who don't pay taxes, to people who don't pay for things we want to be paid for, participate in our community, and spend them on things we don't want, like illicit drugs and weapons. So I think it was foolish to not allow, a legalization measure to go through and to tax it, because a recreational marijuana, I think, should be taxed. It is a recreational item. It's not a medicinal item. So I think I'm done.
Proposition 19. I ran the committee for the medical community against Proposition 19. Proposition 19 had the ability to make me a fortune. Being a regulated dispensary, if that had passed, I could have immediately had my doors open to both recreational use and medical use. I ran it against it because it was wrong. And I'm going to give you a real quick 101 on any type of initiative. Anybody that puts $2 million up to pass an initiative expects to make their $2 million back plus. Almost all of the initiatives that you will find on the ballot have somebody who is sponsoring it. Before you vote yes on an initiative, take a good look who's going to benefit and who's not going to benefit, and whether you're going to get screwed in the end. Because that's what would have happened on Proposition 19. The patients would have been the losers. Us in the industry would have been the winners. Patients who right now who have the ability to grow their own medication, as many plants as they need in the space that they need, would have been limited to a 5x5 area. All Proposition 19, as far as I could see, was limiting commercial growth, was bringing in a huge industry, and was cutting out the patient's ability to take care of themselves. So as far as I was concerned, even though I could have made money off Proposition 19, it was the wrong move to make for the public. So I worked against Proposition 19. Taxes, they say Proposition 19 is going to bring taxation. No, taxes are actually put in by the people, just like Measure C. You get a vote of the people say, yes, we want to have a tax, then you can tax. Proposition 19 did not make that any different than what it is right now. So that would not have made a difference on taxation issues. I would like to see medical cannabis be separated from recreational and not have a tax. However, that's not going to happen. And in all honesty, any under-the-counter medication, including cough syrup, has a sales tax on it. And that's where it stands. And it's a sales tax. Oh, I'm not even looking at you. That sales tax is $100 million to the state of California. And it's over $100,000 every single month, well over $100,000 to $200,000 to the city of Sacramento on a monthly basis.
And I'll follow up with that the idea of Proposition 19, the concept may have been interesting, but the actual policy language that it would have put in place if it passed would have been a disaster for government to attempt to administer. It was a good idea, but it was not extremely well executed in policy. And one of the difficulties with initiatives, and one of the things that gets lost in the conversation about initiatives, is once they pass, we have to go back to the voters to change them. We can't have them changed at the legislature. So if there are policy questions, if there are questions of implementation, there is no way to go back to the organizers of the initiative and say, what did you mean? We have to only look at the language that's in there. There's no way to go to the legislature and say, let's change this because it's passed by initiative, and so it is locked in stone. So in that regard, it's very good that it did not pass. The tax question is always very difficult because no one has a good sense of the size of the marketplace. Depending on which estimate you look at, it goes anywhere from $10 billion to $25 billion per year. Well, basic math says you got to take a percentage of that. Well, which number are you taking a percentage of? If you're taking a percentage of the $10 billion, that's going to be a small number. If you're taking a percentage of the $25 billion, regardless of what that percentage is, that's going to be a much larger number. And by the way, as I mentioned in my first answer, you've got city, county, and state level activity on that front. And so it wasn't just a gross number, but there are also property taxes, local taxes, like the 4% that's been mentioned. There are county tax levels. There's also business licenses and all the other accompanying revenue that can go with it. The revenue estimates are very broad, very vague, and part of that is because no one has a real sense of the marketplace.
Okay. I'm